later on, but the two most expensive squads of players in world football are currently sitting 13th and 14th in the Premier League table, with Manchester United being one of them. And this was supposed to be a season in which Manchester United fans could be quite optimistic that maybe they might not catch Manchester City, but they'd certainly close the gap.
Yeah, we've not seen the involvement of the way he's trying to play, and you have to say that he's probably got the players. What he's got there now, the time he's been, are his players, and I haven't seen any shift in the way they're playing. I think even when you look at those results, the Forest game, 2-0 down, they should have. It's another game they should have lost, but it's the quality of the player they've got.
Wolves should have had an equaliser at the end, should have had a penalty at the end.
So it could be a lot worse. I don't think it's total desperation time because we are 5 games in, but there must be at some stage we have to start seeing some involvement in how they're going to play. They look tired. They looked a bit leggy in the midfield. I thought Brighton got through them very, very easy. The press was unorganised. One player was going in, and it seems like everybody's saying to me, yeah, but Man United, they started so well for the first 15, 20 minutes. But then what happens when you go away to someone like Man United? Absolutely. You're going to get that pressure, and then you see it off. And because Brighton are so organised, once they saw it off, they was very comfortable in the game all the way through.
Because they played with a diamond, Manchester United, and Brighton very quickly worked out that they could go down the sides. And then once they did that, Manchester United had no answer as to how do we re-adapt, if you like.
It was brilliant the way they just constructed it, and then how ruthless they were with the way they opened them up and finished it off. But see how quickly they got the ball to the sides. They actually negated anything to do with Man United's midfielding, Casemiro, Eriksen.
Yeah, but it also comes down to controlling the game, right? You know Man United, they always have control. But when have you seen another team come to them and control the tempo, control the rhythm, control what they're going to do? They maybe start the
numerous
game
occasions since he's been there. They are still, for me, playing Ole Gunnar Solskjaer counter-attacking football.
They waited too long, and then you have a team like Brighton. When they set up and they face you, they almost invite you to put more pressure on them, and they play along you. And that is also what I didn't understand. Like you talked about the pressing game also in the middle of the park, right? When they try to press it up and try to really create something.
Yeah, Bruno's going on his own.
But that is what Brighton wants. They don't even move sometimes. Sometimes they just wait. They invite you, and when you take their invitation, they go right through you. And of course, I think the secret why people still focus so much on Brighton is because they do so little in investing, but they get so high of quality back. You understand? Like, okay, if we call a couple of guys, like, okay, Mitoma, for example, it's not the guy that everybody focused on, but it's amazing to watch. If you watch him, like, why I'm calling him? Because he would be facing me. Why would he be unpredictable? Because he can go both sides. Okay, then we look at what is Man United then? We look at Rashford. Same thing. Goes forward, but now they know that he is their outlet. They're going to focus on that. And that is what they have now. They're almost neglecting themselves that they only have one outlet. And that is not the Man United we know.
Well, this is what, when you watch them, this is what I'm saying about how difficult it is to find out how they're going to break a team down.
Exactly.
Because they started so well. But you're at the Old Trafford Theatre of Dreams. 70,000 people. You know what I mean? You start well, but then Brighton, you see that off, and then you start to impose your game on Man United, and then it's gone. There's no organisation in the press. I'm saying with Casemiro, unbelievable player. You know, the respect I have for him, it goes without saying, but he looked a little leggy. He looked like...
I mean, he had travelled to, I think, Lima. Exactly. He played in.
So
and
even more
played
reason.
A lot of, a few of the players who'd had long
You're just feeling
trips
like
in the international break.
Energized, that they need to be more energised in that midfield. You're hoping that Amrabat will come in and he might give them those legs. But the way and the ease in which Brighton went through them is worrying. And when you look, like the games that they've got coming up, I think is going to be the big test for me now, guys, simply because there's some games coming up. I don't know if we're going to get the graphic for it, but there's games coming up that Man United should be able to put a run together, at least trying to win some of those games. And if they don't do it in that period of games, then you have to really start worrying about Man United.
I have to say, I'm concerned for Ten Hag already. I think the performance at the weekend suggested that he's losing his authority at the club. They're not starting games well. You correctly mentioned the Forest game. I look at that list of fixtures. I don't see one that this current Man United side, with the complacency and the lack of appetite, particularly in their midfield, would win convincingly.
And every single one of those teams down will want to beat Man United.
Absolutely. I look at the Bayern Munich game, and I think that Bayern Munich, with their pacing behind Harry Kane and Kane's ability to score goals, he's scored goals in 3 of his 4 Bundesliga games so far. They will open Manchester United up at the Allianz Arena, and I think that could expose them even more.
Yes.
I'm worried I just don't see that Ten Hag, with all the things he's dealt with so far. Last season he dealt with them well, but if you think about it, they can't win against top 6 teams. They can't win away from home. Now teams are coming to their home and bossing them in the way that Brighton did at the weekend. That to me says that this is not a guy that players are running through brick walls for.
It's going to be pressure then, because if you're going to, like, after that big game, right, and then we're going to watch that, I kind of be watching the game against Bayern and saying like, okay, this is tough. This might not be that time, and we can live with that. But then imagine they go to Burnley, and that is a game that we would say like, yeah, you got to win that game. But imagine, because they are also struggling, so that it's going to be a tough one.
But their game's at Turf Moor, and if I'm Vincent Kompany, I'm going to say to the players, be fearless, pass the ball, look at the blueprint that Brighton set for us, put challenges on that defence. Onana is not doing well in goal at all. Test him. 11 shots on goal. I think he's conceded 8 goals so far. That central defensive partnership as well, it's not working. You can find space in and around them.
You can pass through.
You've seen the way that Burnley play in that first game against Manchester City. I would even fancy Burnley to take points.
It's worrying, Kel. It's worrying. And if I'm Manchester City, if I'm Man United fans, you are worried, because you see them when the third got, they left in droves, and you can't blame them. Obviously, there's so much going on upstairs.
Of course.
But we're talking about Ten Hag and his tenure and how close he's getting, because let's face it, if it goes bad against Bayern, if it goes bad, God forbid, against Burnley, then it's gonna start ramping up, and you think to yourself, then what is the point of getting rid of someone like Ten Hag to bring someone else in to do what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes, you want a bit more organisation in the way they're going to play, Kels, but to do what with everything what's going on upstairs? Too much noise at that.
I was just going to speak to that point, which is that since Brighton beat Manchester United last season, Manchester United has spent £318 million on players, including over the summer. I think it was £130 million net spend. Brighton's net spend over the summer was minus £103 million. They made profit. Obviously, there were big signings going out to the club, and that is very much their model. But Brighton look like they've moved on since last season and improved.
Yeah, their team had 6 changes from the team that beat Newcastle before the international break.
And Manchester United look like they've stayed the same or even gone backwards. So it was to your point really, which is whether, even if it isn't Ten Hag, if a manager could come in and look at that group of players, look at that money that hasn't necessarily been spent on the right group of players, and say, well, we can get more out of them. Yeah,
but that's like when you said when you look at Brighton, it's also the system that they built, right? But if you look at Man United, sometimes you almost forget that their trademark, like even when I came to this country, was their youth system was great. Now they go and get it, because I think they're running on time now. And it's not anymore the time that the time of investing and building. It's now in the time of straight away achieving. And I think that is their biggest problem. When you talk about Ten Hag, like, I know him because, the Dutch connection and where he came from, like from Utrecht to Ajax. And when he was at Ajax, you think like, okay, this is a system that he understands how to build it. But I always say that when I ever talk to someone from my own country, I always say, don't compare it to England, because it's really, the difference is big, and we don't always understand it till it happens to us. And I think, like, I don't want to say that he wasn't prepared to make this happen, but I'm just saying, like, all the individuals that come here, sometimes you got to understand. I was maybe fortunate because I had one in my team that after a while he could tell me, when I for example, was with Hasselbank, he would tell me, like, I remember my first couple of times I got elbowed maybe 3 or 4 times and I split my eyes here. And he would say, are you going to protect yourself? So having said that is just the same what Ten Hag is now going through. He was in control at Ajax. Here, before he signed his deal, it took a little bit longer than he signed it because he was going after that again to be in control. Okay, they maybe promise you're in control, but clearly I don't think he's in control.
I think
100%.
And there's an issue around the Sancho situation as well, which is, I mean, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago before the international break and said it was seemed like a fairly innocuous comment from Ten Hag in the press conference, which is just other players were training better. That's why Sancho wasn't in the squad. Sancho reacted very strongly to that. Now Ten Hag has reacted to Sancho's reaction, and now they're in a standoff where each it appears wants the other to apologise and back down.
Very Dutch what you said, eh? The way you train is the way our national team is identical to that. If you train bad in the national team, you're not playing. If you train bad at Ajax, I would not play. So that's what I heard that, but what you said, so 100% our country. Every team is like that. And our national team, identical.
But the problem for Ten Hag, and this is why I'm talking about the lack of authority, because as a player, there should be a culture within a football club which suggests that a player would not even dare to question the authority of the manager. If you did that at Manchester City, you'd be gone. You know, and there are a number of players who have tried to challenge Pep Guardiola's authority, and they're gone. Great players, but they're gone. And so Alex Ferguson, just every time I tell you I read his book and you guys laugh at me because I'm 5 years too late. But in his book, he talks about the need to retain his authority in the dressing room. And Ten Hag doesn't appear to have that. Otherwise, Sancho would not have dared to say anything. Now, the interesting thing about Sancho is we are in a different era. I remember when I started being a journalist in sport, and managers could characterise a player and the player wouldn't be able to say anything. Social media has changed that. Players do have the ability to say, no, I don't recognise that, I reject that. Also, a manager
finds it harder to sell a player. There has to be backing from board level as well, and there has to be a kind of, you know, a common purpose there, hasn't there?
But yes, there has, and that speaks to your point about he had the control before, and he wanted to get control at Old Trafford, but he doesn't have that. You look at the Antony situation, you look at the Sancho situation, look at the Greenwood situation. There are decisions that
even
I
the
think,
Rashford, remember when
even the Rashford one,
Rashford,
there are lots of decisions being made above. There are lots of players still at the club that should not be at that club, and I think it creates a culture of complacency. I think it almost for some players a comfort zone that they're still in. They check out. You know, there are some players who are still coming on in games. I'm thinking, what are they still doing there? So I think it is a whole club solution rather than just what's happening on the pitch. But I think Ten Hag might ultimately end up as a casualty because I can't see results improving.
I can't see it improving as well. I agree with Darren.
So it doesn't look like it's going to improve anytime soon for Manchester United. Obviously, United fans will be hoping otherwise, and it doesn't look as though
Ten Hag and Manchester United 6 points from a possible 15. Their worst start since the 1914.